The air was electric. Cameras clicked incessantly, capturing every flicker of expression on Melania Trump's face. Then, it happened. A reporter rose, his question cutting through the room like a blade. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward, it was suffocating. What she did next would leave everyone in stunned disbelief. The grand ballroom of the New York Hilton sparkled under a cascade of chandeliers. Sharp suits with row upon row of reporters clutching their microphones stood guard on the plush carpeted floor. Supposedly, it was a brief to tout accomplishments in dealing with Melania Trump's Be Best initiative, a far-ranging initiative to promote the welfare of kids. Yet, beneath that, an undercurrent, the feeling that somehow all had been waiting for something more, wasn't some dry policy pronouncement. Melania Trump stepped forward, her immaculate white blazer ablaze from the camera flashes. She was poised, exuding composure, each movement deliberate. Behind her, a large screen would flash words, among them empathy, strength, growth. The scene was set for an aspirational moment, but it seemed inferred from the atmosphere that expectations were running higher than normal. The First Lady began to speak, her voice soft and clear. She spoke of anti-bullying campaigns improved, of the thousands of children reached, of schools transformed. Her voice carried a calm authority, one that commanded attention without raising volume. Most reporters nodded along, their pens scratching across notepads. But not James Monroe. Seated near the front, Monroe was known for his sharp questions and incendiary opinions. He watched her with a gaze that felt more like a predator sizing up prey. His fingers drummed against the side of his chair as if he were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The speech concluded with polite applause, and the floor opened for questions. A middle-aged man with graying hair, more cautious in demeanor, scanned the room before pointing toward Monroe. "Mr. Monroe, your question?" The journalist rose slowly, straightening his navy blue tie. The room fell silent, all eyes turned toward him. There was something in his posture, a calculated arrogance that sent a ripple of unease through the audience. "Mrs. Trump," he started, his tone oozing of false politeness, "you really have spoken highly of the impact of your initiative. However, many of your critics have said that your campaign is merely to divert attention away from the controversies surrounding your husband. What do you say to those people who think that you are just a pretty face without substance?" The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The crowd gasped en masse, followed by a sea of hushed murmurs. Even the clicking of cameras paused for a second. Many reporters, including those from other media houses, fidgeted uneasily in their seats over the audacity of the question. Melania's face didn't budge. Still not moving, just her hands on the podium, while her eyes, wide open, stared at Monroe's face, a mask of calm, showing nothing. But the room could feel it, a storm brewing beneath her composed exterior. The pause drew out, unbearably long. Every second of silence was a taut wire, ready to snap. Monroe's smug smile faltered slightly, the weight of the room's disapproval pressing down on him. Then she smiled. It was subtle at first, a slight curve of her lips, but it grew into something undeniable. It wasn't forced or diplomatic. It was the kind of smile that carried power, the kind that made everyone sit up straighter, unsure of what would come next. The moment was charged, the air thick with tension, it was almost tangible. And then, in a voice as steady as a heartbeat, Melania finally broke the silence. "Mr. Monroe," she said, her words deliberate, "it's an interesting perspective. But before I answer, let me ask you something." The audience leaned in, their anticipation palpable. Monroe froze, his smugness evaporated by the sudden realization that he may have underestimated his target. When anyone would have finally thought that the pressure got to her, Melania Trump did the last thing any of them predicted. The room froze, the cameras did, and most of all, the arrogant reporter, as she turned his insult into a lesson he would never forget. "Mr. Monroe," Melania's voice rang out, calm but sharp enough to cut through the suffocating tension in the room. "Before I answer your question, let me ask you one." The ripple of murmurs ceased instantly, and every journalist in the room now fully focused their attention on the stage. Monroe's cocky smirk faltered, his hands stopping their casual perch on the edge of his notebook to clutch the leather binding a bit tighter. "Have you ever," she continued, her accent carrying a quiet authority, sat with a child who cried because they didn't feel safe at school? Have you visited the homes of parents who thanked us for helping their children find hope again? Monroe opened his mouth, but no words came out. The silence that followed was deafening. Because I do, Melania replied with unflinching eyes, and let me tell you, those are real moments, real as opposed to the cynicism in your words. The cameras went into frenzy, flashes exploding around the room as the journalists furiously took down her words. Monroe squirmed uncomfortably, ill-prepared for the turn of events now going against his grain. But Melania wasn't done. You see, she said, her voice even but laced with an edge, it's easy to sit behind a desk and criticize. It's easy to dismiss the work of others without ever once walking in their shoes. But substance comes from action, and if you doubt mine, you are welcome to visit any of the schools where our programs have made a difference. The applause was thunderous. A few reporters, including some of Monroe's colleagues, rose and clapped. The sound reverberated across the room, filling the space with a sense of vindication. Monroe's face flushed a deep shade of red as he sank slightly into his chair. Still, Melania's face did not change. She raised her hand for silence, and the applause died away in quick order. The next words were lower, but they were words of finality. Critics will always have their point of view, she said. But as long as our actions continue to help even one child, they are worth more than any headline. She stepped back one step from the podium, the room filling with a mix of awe and respect. Monroe hunched over his chair now, fumbled with his pen, jotting down notes that looked far more like attempts at distraction than a record of this moment. Within minutes, the internet imploded. Her words reverberated across screens everywhere, but nobody could have predicted quite how deep the fallout would reach. This was more than just a clapback, this was the beginning of something so much more. But by the time Melania Trump had stepped off stage, the internet was agog. GIFs and footage of her reply, taken from every conceivable angle, went live on social media at a pace too rapid to count. A few hours in, and along came the trending hashtags, hashtag Melania clapback, hashtag #BeBestMoment, hashtag Monroe meltdown. Responses poured onto Twitter by the thousand. Fans appreciated her composure and determination. Melania just schooled the journalist on grace and substance. Whether you like her or not, that was impressive. Others were less kind to James Monroe. This guy thought he could embarrass her? Nah, she just handed him his career on a platter. Even TikTok, normally all about the latest dance craze or pop culture reference du jour, was alight with re-edits of the exchange, set to dramatic soundtracks. One such clip had reeled in more than 1 million likes in under 3 hours. When you come for her but she's already prepared, read the caption. Meanwhile, news outlets scrambled to cover the story. Conservative commentators hailed Melania as a paragon of class and composure, with even some typically critical voices allowing that the moment was undeniably powerful. A late-night talk show host quipped, "Monroe walked in with a question and walked out with a life lesson, and it was free of charge." But that was only the storm on the public plane. Behind the doors, Monroe's employer faced severe backlash. Emails came in by droves, each demanding accountability from what many framed as a craven effort at character assassination. The next morning, it released this statement: "We do not condone unprofessional conduct by our journalists. Mr. Monroe's line of questioning was inappropriate and does not reflect the values of this organization. Steps are being taken to address the matter internally." A suspension reportedly was on the table for Monroe, though that was not officially confirmed. Newsroom sources close to Monroe described him as visibly shaken, avoiding eye contact and retreating into his office. He didn't just lose control of the narrative, he lost his confidence, one insider says. The chaos passed and Melania had said nothing. She wouldn't give interviews. She didn't issue any statements. A single tweet served as her only response to the situation. Actions over words. Always. #BBest. But it was the simplicity of the response that created a fire of more admiration. Some analysts have said that this could have been that turning point where public opinion began to change for her as former First Lady, and it captures another side of her, one which when under attack does strike back, but retains its poise. But one plot twist did seem to come out of left field. An anonymous email began circulating among reporters. Attached was a detailed account of Monroe's behavior at past press conferences, where he would allegedly target key women for veiled attacks masquerading as hard-hitting journalism. The source was unverified, but the allegations took wing and further sullied Monroe's reputation. As days went by, the topic at hand changed from the exchange itself to its much broader implications, such as debates on social media about journalistic ethics when tough questions were crossing into personal attacks and what kind of resilience that took. When it seemed like the controversy couldn't get bigger, it took a sudden turn with an unbelievable twist. Instead, this would prove a shocking revelation, one that not only vindicated Melania Trump but left everybody speechless. It wasn't until the internet had finished reeling in responses that the most interesting posting showed up, purporting to have undeniable proof that James Monroe's question at the news conference was not coincidence. In a matter of minutes, thousands of rubberneckers viewed the post. This anonymous user named InsiderX showed internal email screenshots from the Monroe network. The emails, if authentic, were damning. One email, allegedly from a senior producer, encouraged Monroe to ask provocative questions that would generate viral moments at Melania's expense. Another email even mentioned targeting her campaign in order to shift focus from more critical issues. The user insinuated that these emails were just the tip of the iceberg. As journalists and cyber sleuths scrambled to verify the allegations, a whistleblower who used to work for Monroe's network came out of the woods. Speaking on condition of anonymity, they corroborated the accusations, describing how sensationalism often replaced integrity. They don't care about the consequences, the whistleblower declared. They care about traffic and headlines alone, even when crossing the red line of ethics. It was the kind of revelation that shocked the world of the media. If Monroe was under fire on many counts before, this created a scandal whose proportions grew day by day. No longer would the initial distancing from his actions suffice. Bowing to overwhelming pressure, they promised transparency and accountability with the announcement of an internal investigation. However, the damage had already been done. Meanwhile, Melania Trump's silence continued to speak volumes. Support for her swelled as people began to view her not just as a former First Lady but as a symbol of resilience against the predatory media culture. Her critics were forced to reevaluate their positions, with some issuing rare statements of support. Then, late one evening, came another turn of events. A reporter at a competing news outlet released an exposé that showed Monroe had been repeatedly warned about his behavior in the past. It listed other cases where he'd used his platform to belittle public figures, almost always women. Public opinion, already unfavorable toward Monroe, turned decidedly hostile. It all reached the boiling point. Media watchdog organizations were demanding industry-wide reforms, saying that networks need to take responsibility and promote ethics over sensationalism. Demonstrations showed up outside the headquarters of Monroe's network. There were signs, "Truth matters, journalism, not harassment." As the furor mounted, Melania's tweet of days before surfaced. The few words, actions over words, always were hailed as prescient in light of the unfolding drama's bigger message. But the final twist came during a live broadcast of an interview with Monroe's former mentor, a veteran journalist known for his integrity. When asked about the scandal, he paused thoughtfully before delivering a statement that would become iconic. James Monroe forgot the golden rule of journalism: the truth doesn't need a headline. It speaks for itself. The fallout had already been seismic, but the final chapter held a revelation that no one could have predicted. What Melania Trump did next wasn't just bold, it changed the narrative forever. As the James Monroe scandal continued to spiral out of control, Melania Trump shattered her silence with a surprise move. Far from issuing some sort of formal statement, or giving anything like a proper interview, she announced, instead, a forthcoming live-streaming event, billed in minimalist fashion, as actions over words, a conversation about integrity. The anticipation was palpable. Social media was abuzz with speculation about what she might say. Would she double down on her position? Call out the media's flaws? Or reveal something even more shocking? The live stream quickly became the most anticipated event of the week, drawing millions of viewers from across the globe. The stream began, and the setting was curiously intimate. Melania sat in a modestly decorated room, the American flag behind her. No grand stage, no audience, just her, a camera, and a quiet resolve. She opened with a simple acknowledgement of the viral moment. This week, many have spoken about words said in a moment that have sparked a much larger conversation. But tonight, I want to focus on something deeper, the actions that follow. She then reminded the audience of the very heart of Be Best, pointing out stories of children who have benefited from the programs. One story in particular stood out, that of Ethan, a 12-year-old boy who had been mercilessly bullied at school. After attending a Be Best workshop, Ethan found the courage to stand up for himself and later became an advocate for other kids facing similar challenges. Midstream, Melania let the bomb drop. A new phase was about to launch. This one would focus on media literacy, the need for ethics in journalism. She called the program one that would help give kids the tools to navigate the digital age with both critical thinking and a commitment to truth. In a world where misinformation spreads faster than facts, our children need tools to discern what is real and what is manipulation, she said. It starts with education, and it starts with us. The announcement received an overwhelming amount of support. Comments poured in through the live chat, congratulating her for turning a personal attack into an avenue of change. Critics had to give in, stating that this move happened at the right moment and with greater effect. Meanwhile, James Monroe's career had hit an all-time low. The internal investigation at his network had terminated him, and no other major outlet seemed willing to hire him. In a shocking turn of events, Monroe went on to issue a public apology during a television interview. Subdued, contrite, he seemed like a completely different person. "I let my ambition cloud my judgment," he said. "What I did was wrong, and am committed to making amends." With the apology, however, Monroe's fall from grace was complete. His story became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers of sacrificing integrity for sensationalism. In the weeks that followed, Melania's new initiative gained traction. Schools across the country began incorporating its curriculum, and organizations hailing from various sectors pledged their support. Her response to Monroe's attack had not only salvaged her reputation but elevated it to new heights. The incident left an indelible mark on public discourse. Media houses were now under increased scrutiny, with watchdog organizations upping the ante and holding journalists accountable. The phrase "actions over words" became a rallying cry, symbolizing a renewed commitment to ethical storytelling.